Hi, my name is Fry, and this is the second episode of Booking Bonanza, the isolation episode, I suppose. In this one, I'll be talking about The Last Woman on Earth, 1960, The Last Man on Earth, 1964, and Limite, 1931.
I never worry, Martin. I hire brilliant young lawyers like you to do that for me.
So I watched Roger Corman's The Last Woman on Earth, and honestly, the film didn't quite land for me. There are some interesting ideas in there, but overall, nah. This was actually the first time I have seen a film directed by Roger Corman. I have watched others where he had a hand in production, and I already had a sense of his reputation as a bit of a point-and-shoot director, and I suppose at least in this case, that reputation feels pretty accurate. That said, I don't want to come down too hard on the man's legacy or be misunderstood. He is well known as a sharp producer and mentor to some genuinely great filmmakers. I'll share a few thoughts on the film itself first, and then I'll throw in a couple of interesting facts I didn't come across until I finished watching the movie. So the plot briefly is this. A businessman, his wife, and the businessman lawyer survive a mysterious event while out scuba diving, only to return and find out the rest of humanity dead. As they try to adjust to this strange new reality, a love triangle begins to form. The wife finds a sense of emotional freedom with the lawyer, but the businessman is not exactly thrilled with the shift in dynamics. Power struggles and tensions quickly emerge. That's really the heart of the film's theme. I think this is the sort of film that really leans on its cast and they just don't deliver. The performances feel completely off. There's a lot of moments where two characters are clearly meant to having quick, snappy exchanges, but the timing and interactions are way off. Honestly, it feels more like a rehearsal than a finished scene. Like the actors are just going through the motions while still working out the blocking. There's absolutely no chemistry between them, and a lot of the acting is just plain poor. And I genuinely can't decide which pairing had the worst chemistry, the lawyer and the wife or the businessman and the wife. Probably the lawyer.
Hi. I see you changed your dress.
Mm-hmm. Join me, won't you?
And then there's the overacting proper melodramatic stuff, like this moment. There are plenty of clips I could show you to back this up. And look, I totally get the argument that pulling a scene out of context might be unfair, but honestly, believe me on this one, it's just not good. Even within the full film, these performances don't hold up. Now, the film's not good, but I actually really like the concept behind it. I am a big fan of both science fiction and noir, two of my favorite film genres, and I think this could have been a really solid and intriguing genre jump film. Something with a from dusk till dawn kind of genre jump. And it sorts of gets there, maybe halfway or quarter, alright, less than that. The thing is, I don't think they meant to go that direction, and if they did, the effort wasn't there. It needed to commit more fully to both genres and really dig into the ideas it was playing with. Plus, a decent cast, a proper cinematographer, and a director with a bit of vision, that would help a lot. So let me explain what I mean. The film kicks off with an incredibly subtle introduction of the three characters, and they don't waste a second. First, there's the businessman played by Anthony Carbone. He's the mob boss-esque figure, the larger-than-life, cocky, fun-loving alpha persona, always puffing on a pipe, oozing confidence, and frankly not a very nice bloke. Then we got the unhappy wife of this self-absorbed, powerful man, played by Betsy Jones Moreland. She's clearly meant to be the femme fatale of the lawyer character. And finally, there's a lawyer, played by Robert Towne, a lackey of the boss. He's not the ambitious type trying to climb the ladder, more of a pencil-pushing lackey. Right away, you know exactly what each character is meant to be. It's classic noir love triangle stuff. There are lots of films that use this setup. We are not just introduced to the characters here, we are also getting a glimpse of the central theme. There are more scenes like the one I'm about to talk about, but to make it as brief as possible, I will only talk about two. This one and the one where the wife enters the room. I don't like them at all in execution, but I can see how on paper they definitely work and could be done properly, if not brilliantly. I don't really know much about what was going on set, so maybe some of the things I'm suggesting in this half-assed pitch of a review just weren't physically possible. After the characters have made it clear who they are, we get a scene that it's almost okay. So the lawyer goes to the businessman room for a file or something, and he's greeted by the wife. They have a short exchange, then move out onto the balcony where she starts playfully taunting him, doing the whole femme fatale dance. She begins walking along the edge of the handrail while keeping up these tense, heavy quotation marks, cat and mouse banter. At least it should be tense, but as I mentioned before, they are not exactly the strongest actors, and there is absolutely no chemistry between them. I don't want to keep banging on about how this film needed better actors, so just assume that after every point I make, I say plus better actors. Anyway, she keeps walking until she literally falls into the lawyer's arms. And you know what? This scene is close to working. With a more interesting camera setup, maybe a full body shot or a two shot that actually shows the danger of the situation, could have had some real impact, something to properly establish the risk, rather than cutting constantly and using close-ups. Throw in some moody noir lighting and visual cues, and it could have been genuinely engaging. As for the dialogue here and in other scenes, it is not great. But I can imagine that with more charismatic actors, it might just work. Or maybe it is good and it's just tied in my mind to these particular performances that drag it down. The next day, they go diving. The businessman is like, hey chap, chill out for a second, let's go diving, have lunch, and then talk business. So they dive in, they submerge, and when they surface, everyone else is dead. This happened around the 50-minute mark, and honestly, the film jumps into science fiction way too early. They really should have held back a bit longer and introduced other characters first, like a proper muscle for the businessman or the hotel concierge who's one of his mates. Why not both? Adding more characters like that would have done two things. A, added to the noir vibe, and B, given the characters more opportunity to react to and interact with this new reality. You know, where a lot of the things that used to matter suddenly don't, and some still do. As it stands, the movie doesn't handle this particularly well, even if you leave aside my idea that it should have been a noir first. So we get the genre jump. And it's a real shame that all the flatness in mood and atmosphere from the first part just carries straight over to the sci-fi section. You would imagine that a film about 3 people left on Earth would be super atmospheric and that they would really ramp up the drama. But nope, it's just as dull and frustrating as the first 15 minutes. It's rather frustrating to see how little effort they have made to craft an environment beyond showing just 3 characters on screen. For instance, one might have expected the characters to abandon those time-consuming hairdos in favor of something more practical given the circumstances. It would have lent the whole affair a bit more of gravity, wouldn't it? Now I want to talk about the wife entering the room scene. I mentioned it before. If I'm not mistaken, the wife enters a room and it seems a bit in denial or something. I could go back and check the exact context, but honestly, it doesn't really matter. I'm just making a point here. Plus, I don't fancy watching it all again. This happens after the mysterious sci-fi event. I thought it would have worked perfectly if in the first part we had a proper noir-style entrance for the same character, you know? The classic femme fatale entrance, with the right lighting and turning the heads of everybody in the room and all that. Then in the second entrance, the others just glance at her while discussing the situation before realizing, alright, let's actually deal with what's going on here. And poor acting isn't the only problem here. There are some very noticeable continuity errors too, like around the 10-minute mark with the straps. In a good film you might miss those, but here with not much going on they are hard to overlook. Then there are some very convenient and distracting moments that really grate the thing more if you're not fully buying into the movie as it is. I found a few bits unintentionally comical, like this so-called romantic moment. I had a bit of fun imagining the director's notes. What did he say? Maybe splash him with sand, like if you were in a pool with water. And then there's a fish sword fight. There are a few things you can give the film credit for, like that one scene where, and I like to think I'm not overcrediting it, there's a cut to a corpse that symbolizes the businessman and wife relationship being irreparably dead. There are definitely some things explored, a few decent shots here and there, I think. I am not rewatching it. And they got a proper location. This isn't just some film shot in the middle of the woods, which helps sell the whole last people alive thing. Now, for some fun facts I picked up about The Last Woman on Earth after watching it. Roger Corman was shooting 2 other films at the same time. Battle of the Blood Island, which he didn't direct, and Creatures from the Haunted Sea, which he did. All 3 were filmed in Puerto Rico thanks to a very favorable tax deal back then. Also, Robert Towne, who plays the lawyer, was actually writing the script while production was already underway. And here's a quirky one. The crew stored both the film reels and their food in the fridge of the place they were staying. Another interesting detail, the poster for the film had a beauty contest attached to it for promotional purposes. Corman himself shared all of this in a video where he talks about it, and if I can find it, I'll link it in the description. One last thing, the film was shot in color, clearly to show off the settings, but perhaps, and I don't think it is just me and my idea of it wanting to be a noir, the film worked better in black and white. The sci-fi elements would also carry far more mood that way, wouldn't they? As for a rating, I'll give this an E. An E-. I like the concept and some elements, but could I have abandoned the film earlier if I wasn't planning to make a review or play this game of how I think it should have been made? Definitely, yes. I can't really recommend it. That said, it's not the absolute worst thing ever, but I just couldn't get past the acting and how dull it gets at times.
Only 3 years. Seems like 100 million.
This was so much better than The Last Woman on Earth, in so many ways. Even though I didn't watch them back to back, I did see it with the first film still fresh in my mind. Plus, I already knew which films I would be featuring in this episode. That said, I'm not doing a comparison. Here I'll be approaching them separately. So first, I'll give a spoiler-free overview of the very simple and straightforward plot. In a post-apocalyptic 1968, Dr. Morgan, Vincent Price, is the sole uninfected survivor of a plague that turned humanity into vampire/zombie-esque ghouls. By day, he hunts and burns the infected in the pit. By night, he hides away in his fortified home. Flashback reveal how he lost his daughter and wife and show through his eyes the downfall of his community. He later come to learn more about the new world he's part of. The movie's just okay. I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it either. I didn't have a bad time watching it, but it's definitely got its flaws. There are a few things I like, but overall, I'm struggling to say much about it as a whole. That's pretty much a direct quote from my notes. It's quite tentative, a rather wishy-washy take, but it does sum up how I feel about it. I really like how it feels like time has passed and how the protagonist has adapted to his new life. Like the calendar marked on the wall and how methodical he's become with his routine. He knows the drill. I also appreciated Vincent Price, his distinctive voice and theatrical delivery. I'm not too familiar with his full body of work, but I understand he tends to be a bit more flamboyant. Even though the film, in my opinion, could have done with a touch more theatricality from him, without losing the character's melancholy, his performance is good and brings a certain charm, that 60s low-budget horror classic charm. I think they made the most of their low budget with minimalistic sets that actually work in favor of the movie's atmosphere. They are not mind-blowing, but they are alright. The film does have its technical hiccups here and there, like a dolly shot where you can spot the camera's shadow, and earlier at the pit there's a continuity error. And I'll try not to always bring the continuity errors, but here it's important because I wish he kept his hand in pocket. It looks cool in this sort of quietly effortless way. I'm struggling to name the type of cool this is, but I like it. It is cheesy, but it's cool. One aspect I wasn't too keen on was the narration. I'd rather the film had left it out. Like that bit at the beginning where he smells the garlic store and tosses it out and replaces it with a new one. Though I think he ends up putting the one up again, but just until he replaces it. Same with the mirror. We could have been introduced to the idea of it just by seeing him look at the broken one and swap it out. It's like that Mars movie with Matt Damon. It would have been more interesting if we just saw him doing things and then figured out what he was going for. I saw it ages ago, but I remember it had some annoying cliches, like the classical Eureka moments and those painfully obvious dramatic reveal delays. I really didn't like it. But anyway, I'm not here to talk about that film. Let's stay on track. And I totally get it from a producer or studio's point of view. Films with long stretches of no dialogue might come across a bit less accessible for a big piece of potential audience. Some of the shots are quite nice, actually. Not exactly stunning, but there's a bit of style to them. Now I want to talk a bit about the ghouls. Can we talk about the ghouls? I just love that word. They are absolutely dreadful, honestly. They come across as rather lame. And the world around them does nothing to help their cause. There's a killing montage and multiple scuffles between Price and these vampire zombies, and they seem surprisingly weak. Price can quite easily impale their hearts with a wooden stake or simply shove them aside without much effort. Hey, perhaps the illness also weakens them. There's your in-universe explanation. Although I suspect it was more a case of not wanting to add much physicality to the performances. Maybe it doesn't help that this proto-zombie is rather vanilla compared to what we are now so accustomed to. More grotesque makeup, greater number of zombies, and definitely stronger unless they haven't eaten in a while or something. Although I quite like the mix of vampire lore in it, or perhaps it's the other way around. And I know the film is more about the sheer implication of being the last man on Earth than about spooky creatures. Now, this is something I haven't mentioned yet, and I'm sure any fan of the film watching this might be wondering about it. I watched the American print, and honestly, the English dub was quite dreadful and rather distracting. The rest of the cast acting wasn't good. And I get this is very much a theatrical, melodramatic, almost stage-style acted movie, not a naturalistic or subtle acted one. And I like both styles. Still, it's not particularly good, or perhaps it is, but that dreadful dub really drags it down. It's poor both technically in terms of sync and in the voice performances themselves, at least in the version I saw. I wish I could get a hold of the Italian cut to compare. For what I understand, some scenes were cut or shortened in the version I watched. Naturally, Price is dubbed in Italian, and I am curious how that was handled. If anyone out there has seen the Italian print and wouldn't mind sharing their thoughts, I'll be very grateful. And as a side note, why not lean into the idea of Price living in Italy, making it the most of his surroundings, and adding yet another layer to his isolation? By the way, I don't want to dwell on this too much, but here's a bit of a side rant. I reckon IMDb, Letterboxd, Rotten Tomatoes, and all those services really ought to have separate entries for different cuts of films that have multiple versions. It just makes sense, doesn't it? Otherwise, reviews and ratings get all muddled up, and it's hard to tell which version people are actually talking about. I use one of those, mostly for the database aspect of it, to log in what films I have watched or intend to, and I would love to catalog them properly. Spoilers ahead, I do belong to the Does the Dog Die Club, and I'm here to warn you the answer is yes, and it really sucks. Seeing dogs die always tugs at the heartstrings, and narratively speaking, it hits hard. It's quite a moment that makes you truly empathize with Price's character. Just when he seems to finally catch a break, he gets knocked down with a heavy below-the-belt blow. Now, regarding the ending, I really didn't like it. I'm not against a grim, dark finale by any means, but this one felt a bit lazy, especially in how it was executed. There was a strange lack of desperation from both Price and the woman. Her attempt to stop her colleagues was so subdued. She's quietly pleading, "Stop, please," when surely she could have done more. Why not have her physically try to hold one of the soldiers back? Even if they dismiss her and shove her aside, it would have added weight and urgency to the scene. And as for Price, surely it's only natural that he will try to reason with them first. Shout, "Wait, I can cure you. I can help you walk in the sunlight again." Something, anything, before launching into that final, tragic, "I'm the last man on earth." That line could still hit just as hard, maybe even harder, if it came after he realized they simply weren't listening. that the new society has already moved on and isn't interested in what he's offering. It would still allow for that raw, bitter freaks moment, but with a stronger emotional punch leading up to it. But to be honest, I did sort of like this film. I wish it leaned more into that theatricality they were clearly toying with. Price was going for it, and if the rest of the acting had been a bit more solid, it could have really worked. It's got that unmistakable 60s horror charm, and I quite like the atmosphere it managed to create. There were at least 3 distinct moments where I genuinely connected with Vincent Price's character, and I appreciate what he was aiming for. They really put his character through the ringer and convey his isolation in a rather neat and effective way. It's flawed. No doubt about that. It's not a great film, but it's certainly not a bad one either. It's just okay. I had an alright time with it. The bad dub definitely detracted from the experience quite a bit, but all things considered, it was entertaining. Limite is a Brazilian film by Mario Peixoto. I like to think I pronounce it okay. From 1931, and I absolutely adore it. I truly love this one. Right, first things first, I don't want to spoil it in any way, shape, or form. So before I go any further, I should mention that it is a black and white, silent, experimental drama running for 1 hour and 54 minutes. If that's not your cup of tea, and I completely understand it, it's not for everyone. It's not a film I would recommend to just any of my relatives or friends. Many will find it a bit dull and they would let me know. But if those genres don't put you off, here's a spoiler-free plotline followed by my spoiler-free thoughts. A man and 2 women stranded at sea fill the empty hours with stories of who they were and how they came to be lost. The visual storytelling does all the heavy lifting. There's no need for dialogue. You get everything you need to follow the story and, more importantly, to feel what's happening from the visuals. I took some notes and there's not much value on them. Most are just me describing scenes that don't really need any analysis because you just get it. These scenes are all show and no need for telling. Come on, they're great. The music was absolutely phenomenal, accentuating everything and adding another layer to the characters. It is a shame there's a missing scene. The performances are very much like silent movie acting and they are really good. I haven't watched a great deal of silent cinema, but I have definitely seen some with this type of acting where it's not as good. The film does have a few minor, almost negligible flaws, like the shadow of the camera operator and what I chalked up to technological limitations of the time. Had the filmmakers had access to today's modern rigs and camera tech, some of the less polished shots might have been much tighter. But honestly, it's really no bother at all, and it definitely didn't affect my enjoyment in the slightest. Now, a slight spoiler, I do wish they hadn't used the title cards to tell us she had the Hansen's disease. It was something we could have easily gathered just by reading glimpses, and even if you missed that, the way the woman moved away made it quite clear it was something bad. It would have kept the mood and atmosphere. It is a film that's very open to interpretation in the sense that it's clearly trying to say something, and it feels deeply personal. I don't want to spoil this tale of tragedy and misery, but it will be genuinely interesting to hear your thoughts on it. I've been thinking about The Quiet Earth, a film I watched some years ago, and I remember really enjoying it. I do wonder whether it still holds up. I recently watched a film I used to love, and it just didn't work the same way at all. It's funny how our tastes naturally shift over time, innit? I did consider including The Quiet Earth in this episode, but it would have added quite a bit more to both the running time and the amount of work involved. And I'm keen to get this episode out as soon as possible. Have you seen it? Did you like it? Is it as good as I remember? Also, what did you think of the video and the films I talked about? Have you seen any of them? Or are they on your watch list? Thank you for watching and goodbye.